Good evening and happy Sabbath. It is so good to be with you guys this evening. And I've been thinking about telling my story for a long time, ever since I was in Bolivia. So I'm super excited, but also super nervous because I have to cram in 8 months worth of stuff in this little time that I have. But before I start, I want to have one more word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this beautiful day you've given to us. Thank you that I have the opportunity here to share what you've done in my life. And be with me, help the words that I say not to be mine but yours. And we love you so much, Lord. Amen. So I remember I was sitting in the airport in Santa Cruz, and we were getting ready to board our flight to Riverview, which is where Familia Feliz is, where I would be serving. And I was sitting next to one of my SMs, my fellow SMs, and we were talking about how excited we were and the nerves and the things we were worried about. And he says to me, how in the world am I even going to be able to do this? This job that God is calling me to do just seems too big. And I remember telling him in that moment to remember the phrase, more of you and less of me. And I think that helped me more throughout this whole entire year than anything else. And so that is the mindset I went into my SM year with. Whether I kept that the whole time, that's another story, and you'll find out in a little bit. But that was a mindset, just completely abandoning myself for service. And that is what I did. So we got on the flight, and we're starting to descend, and I look out, and I see the place where I'll be spending the next 8 months. And boy, oh boy, was it surreal. So we land there, and I just remember being met by one of the volunteers there at Familia Feliz, and he comes in this big truck thing, and we load all our stuff into the truck and ride in the back of the truck with all of our luggage. And maybe I should explain this real quick. So yeah, this is a little ahead of myself, but basically this is someone's house, and then this is one of the girls' houses late at night, and then one of the girl SMs calls us, and he's like, hey, can you send your boys over here to come get this porcupine out of our house? And I was like, what is that? And we get over there, and we see that, and the boys are just like, I don't know if you saw, they had like a mattress to like protect themselves and just charge forward with the mattress in front of them, or chucked wood at it just to get it out of the place. Anyway, got a little sidetracked. Anyway, so we get to Rure, and we get to spend a little bit of time in there before we head over to campus. And it's just such a beautiful town where I was at. There's beautiful mountains in the background and a river as well. And it's a small little town as well. And I think what surprised me the most was how friendly everyone is. I feel like people say South American people are like mean or something. I just had that mindset, but they were just so amazing. Anyway, so but that was surreal, but getting to Familia Feliz was just the most incredible experience, those first moments. I remember we pull up to the gate, and they start to open the gate, and you just look down this big path, and then it's just every single kid from Familia Feliz is just running towards the truck and just screaming and shouting. And we drive into the campus, and kids are hopping on the truck and like talking to me in Spanish, and obviously I have no idea what they're saying. But I just instantly fell in love with everything about it. The kids, the landscape. It was like instantaneously, like I was so ready to do what God had for me. And then we start driving up to the houses to drop people off, and I was dropped off at my house first. And the name of our house is Guerreros de Dios, which means warriors of God, and it is the the older boys is who I was taking care of. And we get there, and I remember the first thing that happened was a little kid came up to me and just punched me in the stomach. Not the most sweet memory ever, but that, and then older kids were just talking to me, asking me questions in Spanish, and I would just say like, "Sí," and they would ask me like, "How was my trip?" and I would just say yes or something. And I also remember there were just bugs everywhere. There was ants all over the floor and mosquitoes just attacking you at any second that they got a chance to. But the first day, it's an understatement to say I was overwhelmed. Like, if you can imagine just surrounded by kids in a place where you've never been before, and they're speaking a different language than you speak. It was so overwhelming, but it was so nice to know that I was actually in the place that I had been planning to go and where God had called me to be. So before I go any further, I feel like I should explain what Familia Feliz is and kind of what my work was that I was doing there. So Familia Feliz is a boarding school for at-risk children in rural Bolivia. And the main goal of Familia Feliz is to be a refuge and a family for orphaned, abused, and neglected children. And they provide with a Christian education and create an environment where they feel loved and hopefully have a sense of real family. And all of these kids come from difficult or dangerous backgrounds and home lives. And the part that I get to play in this whole organization is I get to basically be a house parent to 15 boys and just do life with them, basically. Help them with their homework, cook for them, get them ready for school, and most importantly, show them that they can be loved and that they're capable of being loved, and showing them a Christ-like example. So, kind of like a day-to-day life in Familia Feliz was we would get up in the morning, we would do our worship and cook breakfast for them, and then they'd go off to school at around 8, and then they have school from 8 to 12, so it's only, 4 hours? And then after that, they come back, and then there's really nothing else for them to do in the afternoon. It's just like you help them with their homework and just get to hang out with them, really, which was a blessing and sometimes caused for a lot of boredom, which also created some cool ideas for games and stuff. But I knew that Familia Feliz was a difficult place to be. For one, like, for example, that is you can't really see, but there was hundreds of thousands of bugs just in our house, like gnats. And using like bug spray and a lighter to kill them all, basically. But little like things that make you uncomfortable. I was ready for the bugs. I knew it was gonna be hot, but like something I did not prepare for was cooking. I'm really bad at cooking. I've never cooked before I got into Bolivia, and I'm cooking for 15 boys. That's crazy. Who let me do that? So there's one day I was making a meal there for them. It was pasta, and I somehow, I don't know what I did, but I somehow burnt the pasta. I don't even know that's possible. But I burnt the pasta, and so Matthew, who is my co-house parent, it wasn't just me with the 15 boys. I had another SM helping me out, Matthew. And so we go to try the pasta before we give it to him, and we cannot finish it. And I'm like, oh boy. So it was time for lunch. The boys are starving, and I'm like, well, we don't have enough time to make another meal, so I just put it out there for them. And I just see them eating, and they do a good job of not making me feel bad, because they just go around the corner and then just make sure I'm not looking and just like dump out all the food that I give them. But anyway, as silly as this sounds, in that moment, like I felt like I really failed them. And it was the first moment where I felt that failure while I was there. And I think it's really easy as like a parent or doing something that is bigger than yourself to sometimes rely on yourself and think that you have to do it all on your own, and that it's all up to you to do what is in front of you, and rely on yourself, I think is what I'm trying to say. And in that moment, like, I'd been relying on myself, and I was succeeding there for the first week. And like, then I hit this failure, which sounds silly. I burned pasta. It's really doesn't seem like that big of a deal because I've made plenty more meals that were terrible. But I remember I was just so sad. I'm like, how am I gonna do this? And one of the boys came up to me and he's like, all right, teacher, you gotta learn how to cook. And he's like, I'll teach you. And so we literally just right then started making food, and he was teaching me how to make rice and eggs is what we made. And I don't know, at that moment I realized it wasn't just me that was there to do the work. And that sometimes, like, the boys were there to help me out a little bit. I was part of a family now. And my grandmother actually got me a sign that says, for the house, that says, we aren't perfect, but we're family. And we put that up in our house, and I think it's perfect for this scenario. Like, I mess up, but like, as a family, we help each other out to get through the situations that are presented before us. So something I learned right then is whether failure remains a failure or becomes an opportunity for growth, it all depends on your attitude. So I could have an attitude of like, man, I have failed, and what am I supposed to do? I'm a failure, I can't do anything else. Or I could have the attitude of like, all right, I failed, what can I do better for the next time? And understand that like, people are there to help me along the way. Some other things, I just wanted to share a couple like fun memories. They're a little like short memories, but basically that's what day-to-day life consisted of, little short memories that just made it so amazing and sweet. And not anything like super big, it was just the little moments. So I just want to share a few of those with you. I remember playing marbles with that little kid who was just on the screen. His name's Leonardo, and that is like the thing I did the most when my first week there. I was just playing marbles with him like for hours, and that's how I practiced Spanish as well. I would try and pick up on words as he was, and I would try and talk to him as we were playing marbles. But probably my favorite part of it is he would trash talk me so much and say, I'm so much better than you at marbles. And then when I would win, it was just the best. But anyway, that's the main way I like learned Spanish, was with the little kids and playing marbles with him. One morning, so I brought my trumpet to Familia Feliz, and one of the boys saw that I had it, and he's like, all right, teacher, let's do something. He's like, tomorrow morning you should just surprise everyone and just play your trumpet as loud as you can and wake them up like that. I was like, all right, cool, I'll do that. So I get up in the morning and I play Reveille, and then it was just the most amazing experience seeing them just jump out of bed. I should have done it more often because it was hard to get teenage boys out of bed, but then they just hopped right out of bed. And I remember one kid was just laying down in bed and he just like saluted. It was so perfect. Anyway, yeah. Another time we were cleaning the floors, and we have like, I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures. There's like, in our house, there's like just white floors, which is not good when you have like mud all around and teenage boys running around it all the time. It takes a lot to keep it clean like all the time. But one day, we decided that we were going to mop the floor like really well, and the boys just took buckets of water and soap, put it on the floor, and then I think I turned my back for like 1 second, and then all of a sudden they're just lined up, and then crouched down on the floor, and then just belly slide like across the floor to like mop it up. It was just, I mean, they got the job done, so I can't complain. But anyway, another little moment it's so good. There was little moments also where I would cook with the younger ones, and they loved to fry eggs, which was amazing because, for one, I'm getting them to focus on something like cooking, and they do an alright job at it, and then they stay out of trouble. Like, it's just the best. I also played Legos with them. One of the previous SMs brought like a giant suitcase full of Legos and stuff, and then that was also an amazing moment. They'd always come up to me and say, "Can you make me an airplane?" or something like that. And another little moment. I also brought my guitar there as well, and some of the boys were interested in learning guitar, so I started to teach some of them guitar, and that took a lot of patience for sure. But just how excited they were reminded me of like when I was younger and when I was wanting to learn guitar. It was so much fun getting to help them learn. And one day there was a boy named Paro, and I was teaching him how to play the song Reckless Love, and he just could not get the strumming pattern to save his life. And we were practicing before lunch, and finally it was time for lunch, and I'm like, all right, I'll teach you more after we finish lunch. So we still have the guitar in hand, and we go to pray for lunch, and then as soon as we're done playing, he literally just starts playing it perfectly, and he just got so excited, I got so excited, and then he ran up to me and he said, "Thank you, Father." And that was just an amazing moment for sure. And another moment like that was I was walking down the hallway of our house with Matthew, and one of the boys comes up, puts both his arms around us, and he said, like, "You guys are my fathers as well." And that was within like, I would say 4 or 5 weeks in, and they're saying that to me. I'm like, there is no way that it is possible for that to happen, for like the connection that I have with these boys to happen like on my own. It is for sure God in this circumstance, and helping us get closer together and helping us show each other how to love. Something that we do is, like, birthdays are extra special at Familia Feliz, and I don't know if some pictures have passed by of like a little kid covered in egg and flour, but that's like what we do for anyone who has a birthday. We do that, and we make them cake and pizza, and it's just a really special moment, and it's just like they haven't had that before, like something to make them feel really special. And it's just awesome that we can all, as like a family in our house, just celebrate one person and celebrate our love for them. So, like, I say all these amazing, fun things about these boys because they got a lot of personality. And like, I remember thinking to myself, how can these boys have gone through so much trauma and still feel happy? It almost started I almost started thinking, like, do they really have this trauma? They're like amazing kids so far, and they have been such a big blessing to me and are happy and have this amazing personality. But as the weeks went by, I started to pick up on some things. Each and every day of life at Familia Feliz, the lives of the boys started to get more and more real to me. And one day I noticed that one of the boys was feeling down, and eventually I asked him why he was so sad, and He told me that he was sad for his family, specifically his mom. He didn't give me any details, really. And then I asked him about his dad, and he just shook his head and didn't say a word. And so a few days later, I was talking with him, and he told me a little bit more about his family and the poor relationships that they had. And another boy who was near me while we were talking, he was like, all the boys in the Guerreros don't like their parents. And I asked him, you as well? And he nodded yes. And then I think when I truly realized the pain and suffering that they were going through with their trauma was one night we had an incident with one of the boys, and he broke out of our house. By broke out, I mean he crawled through like a bathroom window that was open, and he snuck over to the girl's house, and there's like an upstairs to the house which has like the director's things and stuff that just, anyway, there's a bunch of random things there, and he was seen over there trying to steal something and was caught by one of the SMs. And so she brings him back to our house and wakes Matthew and I up. And like when I heard that, it was just, I had no idea what to do. I think it was about 3 weeks in, so I'm just figuring out how to cook, how to not burn pasta. How am I supposed to discipline a kid in Spanish while also making sure that he knows that I love him? Like, I understand the phrase that parents use. I wasn't angry, I was just disappointed. But I actually think I was angry, not necessarily at him, not at him at all. I was angry at the fact that this boy has grown up his whole life truly lacking the knowledge of the love that God has for him. And I was angry that his heart was driven to the point of unrest that he wanted to make this bad decision. And I'm angry that all the boys lack peace. And it all boils down to the fact that I was angry at sin. I was genuinely so mad that sin was breaking the hearts of my boys. And sin has caused them to live a life of neglect, and they've had to deal with it. And it has caused them to live with a feeling that they can't be loved. And it's because of sin that they are broken. And I've never seen that more clearly than that night when that boy decided to do what he did. At that moment, I realized, yes, they're warriors for God, but they're also broken warriors. And that they're all fighting a battle behind the scenes that I don't know about. And they are trying to do it on their own, and they don't have peace in their life. And they try and fail just like each and every one of us. And they're just silently fighting without the help of God in their life. So I was, in that moment, asking, how am I going to show this boy love while also letting him know that this is not okay? And in that moment, we had the director come over too. This was like also midnight or 1 a.m, something like that. So we have the director come over, he talks to him, and I just remember thinking, I think the only thing that I can do is just pray in this situation. So we were all tired, and it probably wasn't a good time to discipline anyway, so we all went to bed, and we were going to talk about it tomorrow. And I remember Matthew and I, we'd go to our bed, and we just look at each other and say, this is no place for this. Like, the devil's not welcome here. We never want this again. And we sat there or kneeled and prayed, the most earnest prayer I've ever prayed. And I said, I'm going to commit all of my time here with the main goal of giving these boys the best chance to make a decision for Christ. If I can actually see that happen, great, amazing. But if not, I know that I will help them get one step closer to that goal. And we just prayed over our house and prayed that we can help them get a step closer to receiving that peace in their life and helping them understand that they can be loved. So now I knew where I was. Now I knew what God had planned for me. I saw the need, I saw the mission, to do everything I possibly could to show them that they're capable of being loved, and that there's something better for them if they choose to accept that love. So going on to another story, I remember there was another boy who wasn't, I guess, so when you get there at Familia Feliz, basically the first thing that they'll talk to you about is like, oh, do you know this teacher before you? Do you know this teacher before that teacher? And they're like, yeah, they were pretty great. And then makes you feel like, okay, cool. I gotta live up to all these people before them who have helped grow and shape them. And they can be very manipulative in that fact and let you know that they really like the other teachers. It's like, this teacher did this, why can't we do that? And stuff like that. And it really got to me in the beginning. Because I wanted them to like me. I wanted them to love me back. But one day, I remember Matthew and I were trying to get them all to shower, and they were arguing with us like, the last teacher let us go to bed so much later than you guys. When we talked to the last teacher of what time they put them to bed, and we put them in bed at the same time. Anyway. So we go to put them to bed. We're like, you gotta get in the shower because it's time for bed. And they were just so angry and frustrated. And then one boy goes in the shower and he just screams like at the top of his lungs, we wish we had the other teachers go back to the United States. And that was so tough. Back then it really affected me because I loved them so much instantly, like when I first got there. And now that they're saying like, we don't want you here, go back to the United States, it's tough to hear for sure. But I asked myself in that moment, like, what is my purpose here if these kids are just gonna hate me and just not want me here? But we go on something, it's called an SM retreat before we go to where we're going to serve. And that SM retreat, I think I clung to the most throughout my whole entire time there, because at that moment is when I knew for a fact that God had called me here. And in this moment, I thought of that SM retreat and how called I felt in that moment and how sure that this is where God wanted me to be. And that gave me peace because I knew that God had put me there for a reason. Like, I might not be able to see it in this very moment, but God had put me there for a very specific reason, and I made the decision to keep loving them. I think that's when I started the phrase that also carried me through my SM year, which was just keep loving. And no matter what, just keep loving them. You make a mistake, keep loving them. They say they want you to go back to the United States, keep loving them. So after that, it wasn't like fully was over it, but I definitely had peace and was on the road to starting to not put my identity in what the kids thought of me, but in the fact that God had called me there to do a specific work for Him. So in Bolivia, there's, like I said, a lot of mosquitoes. You're in the jungle, and there is a plethora of diseases, rashes, everything you can think of. And there's something called dengue fever, which is from a mosquito. If it bites you and is infected, it will give it to you. And what dengue is basically, it's like something that affects your bone marrow, which makes you ache in your bones, and you're really weak, and you have a high fever for about like a week straight. And there was a time where it started to go around all of campus, and just people would be out for weeks. For a week, and there was moments where we'd have like half of our SMs like working there and kind of doing double time. And then there was a moment where I also got dengue, and it was definitely a crazy experience being in another country with like some random disease from a mosquito far away from home. high fevers, bone aching, and you can barely walk. So I was just bedridden for a week. And at the moment, this is gonna sound really bad, but at the moment I was losing patience with the boys. I was like, great, I get a week-long break to just rest. But about like 2 days in, I was really missing the boys, and I think it made me realize even more how much of a blessing it was to be serving them and to be a part of their life. And so as we kept going through my week of dengue, some of the Bolivian volunteers came and asked, do you want to have like this ice cold blanket? And I was like, absolutely. When you have a fever of like 103 all the time, I would love that. But they came over, and yeah, they had this blanket of ice water that they wrapped around me, but then they kept wrapping around more and more blankets around me until I was like this burrito just like on a table. And they like prayed over me, and I was like, what is going on? They just put me on a table and wrapped me in a burrito. I thought I was just getting a cold blanket or something. But I was there on the table, they prayed for me, and then it's like this treatment that they do, this hot-cold treatment. So it's like cold at first, you're wrapped up in a ton of blankets. I don't know if there's been a picture here, I think there was, yeah. But, and then it starts to warm up, and they put like they cycle like a cold rag over your head. And I remember laying on the table, and all the boys were next to me, and he was like, teacher, when you die, can you give me your phone? Like, can you give me this, can you give me this? I'm like, I'm not gonna die, am I? Anyway, but after that experience, I don't know if it made me feel better or anything, but eventually I recovered from it. But also near the end of dengue, I got salmonella, so like, I was out for even longer. So anyway, that was a crazy experience. Matthew definitely struggled a bit because I wasn't there to parent for a week, and he had 15 boys alone. I feel so bad. But yeah. So there's this one, going on to another story, and there's just so many stories. That kid was cooking eggs. One of the things that I kind of struggled with is favoritism, per se, because obviously there's some kids who you just click with more, and some that you just struggle with, and some kids who talk to you more and some kids who don't. So it's easier to spend more time with some of them than others. And especially when I was uncomfortable, I would spend time with the kids who I was more comfortable with. And sometimes that came at the expense of like other people, other kids, basically. And it is difficult when you have 15 boys to spend an equal amount of time with them when you're just two people. And one day, there's one of the boys that I particularly struggle with and that I feel like I have to get onto all the time. I saw them like pretending to throw rocks, but they did a good job at pretending because I thought they were really throwing rocks. And I had been over it so many times, like we're not throwing rocks, we're not throwing rocks. And when I saw that, I just got, there's two other boys with him, I should say, and then I saw him do it, and then I called him out, and I said, come over here, and I was pretty upset with him, and then he just like started shouting at me and crying, and he says, how come you don't ever punish the other ones and just me? And I think he called them like your sons, is what he said. And like when he said that, I'm like, wait a second, maybe I don't understand the whole story. And so at that moment, I decided it's probably not a good time to discipline him and a better time to listen to him. So I let him explain that he actually wasn't throwing rocks, and I apologized to him, and I told him how much that I loved him, and I apologized that he felt like I had not been showing him love, and that I've been unequally spending time with people. So I learned that it's sometimes very valuable to understand a situation first before acting. if I would have just taken a moment just to talk and find out exactly what had happened, to figure out that he actually wasn't throwing rocks, then I could have avoided that whole situation. But it also made for a moment where I got to understand how he truly felt, and that he felt like he wasn't receiving the attention that he needed from me. Something that Matthew and I decided to do is every Friday night we decided to have a big meal for our boys, just to make like Sabbath extra special. So we would spend all day cooking and making like this big meal for them. We moved like our tables, we lined them all up, and we had just so much food. And that was probably one of the most amazing things we could have done, because it really made us feel like a family, and Sabbath really special. And I remember one Friday, I think it was the first Friday night we decided to do that, one of the boys came up to me, and this is the same boy who said, "Go back to the United States." He goes up to me and he says, like, "Can I talk to you?" And I said, "Of course, but we're about to eat. Can I talk to you after, when everyone also is getting ready for bed and everything?" So we had our meal, and then he comes up to me, and both Matthew and I are there, and then he asked me the question, "Do you guys think I'm a good kid?" And Matthew and I both say yes. I don't think any of those kids are bad per se. Of course, like, I just don't think they know how to voice what they want to voice, and the way that they do that is through disobedience. Deep down inside, they're all really good kids. So yes, I said to him, but then he says, "But you wouldn't be proud of the person who you don't see. There's like so many things I do that make me a bad person." And again, this is near the beginning, so this is also through like Google Translate as well that he's telling me this. And I don't know how to respond to that or anything, other than just to like tell him that I love him and that nothing will change that. And that just because you make little mistakes, it doesn't define your actions. Obviously, I didn't say it like that. I said it with like elementary level words, but that's the point I tried to get across, and hopefully it worked out. Some things I just didn't get to see the results of, but hopefully it's a little seed planted. So about where I'm at, where I'm talking right now, it's about Christmas time. And during Christmas, they go back home to their abusive lives, which doesn't make sense sometimes, but some of the kids go back and some of them stay. And then at that point, it's a time for like the SMs can take some time to go travel or take some time off. And we took 3 weeks off and traveled around South America, which was amazing. But I won't share about that tonight. So if you want to hear more about that, you can ask me questions some other time. But I remember it was getting to Christmas time, and there was like lights in town. I know there's been some pictures up here that might have had lights and stuff, or of us going there in town. And we decided that it would be really cool if we could just take all the kids over there to see the lights and everything. And so we take all the kids over there, and then it's like on the way back, it just started pouring. And I don't know if you've seen, I think there's a picture of the truck thingy that we like get in and takes us places, but there's no roof over it or anything. So it's like pouring rain, and you got all these kids in there, and it's cold. And I just remember like sitting down in the bus, and I have like 2 little ones just like huddled up against me, just like shivering. And it was just like, it was a crazy moment, and everyone was just like, "Please just get us out of here." But I don't know, just the moment of like having them like huddled up against me and stuff, it was a really cool moment. So now I'm going to talk about after Christmas break, when we took our time in South America, and then we came back. And we found out later in the first part of our time there that we were going to be changing directors. And that's also a very long story, so if you want to hear more about that, I can tell you later. But we were transitioning to new directors, and we couldn't find like a permanent director. So we have this interim director here. He's still there now, and he is kind of there to help us create like a restructure Familia Feliz in a way that can be like someone else can just come and pick it up where it left off and have like a set of policies and rules and stuff. So we get there, and like first thing, there's just like a ton of changes. For one, I don't have to cook anymore. There's like a cafeteria, so I'm sure the boys were happy about that. And it's transitioning more to be like a school instead of an orphanage, like a boarding school. And we had like tons of meetings. I remember we got there and they were still on vacation, so not all the kids were there. And we were having tons of meetings discussing like new policies and helping like decide which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones will help Familia Feliz and stuff like that. And it was a lots of meetings, and I don't know if I'd ever want to be on a board, but yeah. So lots and lots of meetings. That's all I can really say. So the kind of like how it was restructured now is the way like our schedule, right, is all they really had was school from 8 to 12, and now that was the only thing scheduled in, but now pretty much every hour of the day was scheduled in for them. Now we were starting a vocational education program which helped them learn to work and build work ethic, which I think was a really good idea. And also changing teachers, changing principals, which was really, really helpful. And then I think the first major problem we ran into was like we needed teachers, because we were like a week away and we had no teachers to teach the school. So, and it needed to be teachers who had a degree and had a work visa. And luckily, like one of our SMs has a degree and a work visa, so that's one. And then there's some volunteers there who were able to fill in there, but we were still lacking teachers, and it was like a day before and we still didn't have teachers. And like we couldn't just like not do school. So what the director does is he asks us SMs if we could be teachers as well. So like when Matthew taught Bible, I taught PE, and the reason I came to Familia Feliz was because like, great, I don't have to teach. And then here I am teaching PE to kids who don't want to learn PE. But yeah, so did that, and then someone else was teaching psychology, and I think that was it from the SMs. And then so basically, like my job is completely shifted. Like I just started to get comfortable being a house parent, and now all of a sudden I'm teaching PE. I'm helping out, like teaching in vocational education. And something, I forgot to mention this earlier, but there's also Pathfinders there at Familia Feliz, and it's really, really big. And the directors really take it seriously. And there's a chance that they weren't gonna do it, considering, like, as you can tell, we had scheduled in a lot more this second half. And so they were talking about doing Pathfinders, and they're like, we're not gonna be able to do Pathfinders unless we can get one more person to volunteer and be like a sponsor for it. And I instantly volunteered because I think Pathfinders is so important for them, because it gives them something to be a part of and something where they can actually go out and serve in the community. There's some pictures up here of them like in town with booze, and they're showing people like how to tie knots, like things that they've learned, and how to like create like a stretcher to carry people, and how to like an arm sling kind of thing. And just them being able to share that with other people is so impactful, especially for them to learn how to serve. So I was house parent, PE teacher, vocational education, like supervisor kind of thing, and then sponsor for Pathfinders. So I went from just being a house parent to all of that. But it was a little different because no longer would we have as much time with just the kids in the house. It was, again, they have everything scheduled out for them till like 5 or 6. So I felt more, it was less of like a house parent